together. Radio Manu 91 where it's always better. Where it's always better. Yo, सुबह का सूरज या शाम का रंग, we bring you joy हर जुबान का धन. Community की बात हम हैं आपके साथ, let's spread the love. चलो मिल के साथ tune in, turn up, दिल से बात करो. Radio Manu 92 FM के साथ चलो. Every voice counts, हर लम्हा यहाँ. चलो बात करके देखते हैं, let's all shine on. Yo, let's all go. सेहत की बात or dreams to share. Radio Manu 92 FM, we're always there. From unity to joy, we bring the light. Every word, every tune makes everything right. Listen up, it's time to unite. Radio Manu 92 FM, shining bright. Dill se suno, we love and care. Chalo baat karke dekhte hain, let's take it there. So come along for the ride. Radio Manu 92 FM, we're by your side. चलो बात करके देखते हैं. Your voice, your guide.
This is Radio Manu 90.0 FM. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
ये है रेडियो मानू 90.0 FM. पेश है सूफी नामा.
Welcome to the program of Sufi Name. We are today in conversation with Professor Azizuddin Hussain.
Yeah.
And it's my great pleasure to meet you today. And first of all, my congratulations to the publications of your recent volume on Sufis of the Deccan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Can you perhaps tell us a little bit more about the specificities of Sufism in the Deccan? So what makes it different from Sufis in the north of India?
As far as Sufis of Deccan are concerned, so we find in two aspects different from the north, because Sheikh Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer and Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki of Delhi and Hazrat Nizamuddin Awliya of Delhi, they were writing and speaking Persian.
Mm-hmm.
But when they came to Deccan, they also spoke Persian, they also worked in Persian, but at the same time, they adopted the Deccani language. And they wrote books in Deccani. And number two, the North Indian Sufis, they did not pay direct attention for the promotion of learning among women. The Sufis of Deccan paid special attention for the guidance and the teaching and learning of the women in the Deccan. So the women became the part and parcel of the life of the Khanqa here, and they wrote Tambihun Nisa, Tawfatun Nisa, Hekamun Nisa, such type of works like Charkhanama, Chakkinama and all that, so that they should gain knowledge by reading those works in Deccani. So in this way, I think they are different from the North Indian Sufis.
And when did they start writing in Dakni? Did they immediately start, or from which century on do we find source material written in Dakni? And to what extent has this material been edited, or is it mostly in manuscript?
Yes, as far as the learning of Deccani is concerned, it took some time because they were having the knowledge of Arabic and Persian.
Yes.
And when they settled and came in contact with the people of Deccan, then they started learning. When they learned Deccani, I think from 15th and 16th, 17th, they started writing both poetry as well as prose.
I see.
Now, as far as this material is concerned, some part of this literature, Sufi literature, is edited and also published. But large number of their works are still lying in the manuscript form in the Oriental libraries of the world, like Salarjung Museum, State Archives, Telangana State Archives, Maulana Azad Library, Aligarh,
Yeah.
Khuda Baksh Library, Patna, Rampur Library, Rampur, and British Library, London, and Bodleian Library, Oxford. So everywhere we find some manuscripts dealing with the Sufis of Deccan wrote in Deccani.
I see, but is here, for example, a tradition of teaching these texts in universities? For example, here in Manu, can your students study here these texts?
No. As far as the syllabus is concerned, so Manu is not teaching that way to the students in the medium of Deccani. Urdu department might be having some part of a syllabus teaching Deccani, but not as a whole.
So who is learning it and who is able to study these texts?
I think now the old scholars are working on it, but as far as the new generation is concerned, they are not aware of it. They are not able to read it or understand it. So this is a great challenge for us.
Yeah, so there would be a major need in, let's say, keeping this tradition alive
Of
and
course,
to
yes.
have more
Yes,
students studying it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will forward your question to Professor Sayyid Ainul Hasan, Vice Chancellor of Manu, that you have, Professor Orthman has suggested to you introduce Deccani also for the teaching of students, so that this Sufi literature could be studied and they could work at it also and publish this literature.
Can you tell me more about the second aspect you mentioned, about the women or the role of women here in Sufism? Did the women, for example, have their own Khanakas, or was it separated from the male Khanakas, or how was this interaction? And were women also writing their own texts, or were texts written for women?
Now, as far as the Khanka life is concerned, so all were living in the same Khanka. There was no separate Khanka for the women, Sufis. And secondly, they were not writing.
They were not writing?
They were not writing because from 12th century AD up to 18th century, we do not find any book written by a Sufi or an alim on any subject or any aspect of life. Only Sufis, male Sufis, were writing books for their guidance, and they were reading, reciting, and also remembering, like Charkhanama is concerned. So while I was working on the Tazkiras of Sufis, so some women memorized those Charkhanamas. Now they don't require to read it from book. They remembered it.
So women did not learn how to write and read? Is this correct? So
No,
they
but,
had to listen?
I can't say with definite way because we don't have any record
I see.
written by a woman Sufi.
Okay, so maybe they were able to read, but we don't find texts written by them. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
Okay. And I have another question. Because when we talk about Sufism in the north of India, the topic of the interaction between Sufis and rulers is an important one, or Sufis and sultans. To what extent is this important for the south, also for the Deccan? What were the relationships between Sufi groups and, let's say, local rulers here and the Deccan sultans?
Now, as far as the sultans of Delhi are concerned, so some were having good relations with the Sufis, but some were not having good relations with the Sufis. Nizamuddin Auliya also faced same problem, but as far as the Deccani rulers are concerned, they were having great respect for the Deccani Sufis, and they provided all support for running the Khanqa and for the promotion of learning as well as the communal harmony. So as far as this relationship in Deccan is concerned, is very nice, and we find that is why there was no clash between Sufis of Deccan and the sultans or the rulers of Deccan. But we find when the Aurangzeb came, so this Sufi movement was highly influenced from Aurangzeb's aggressions and also suffered a great setback because Aurangzeb conquered Bijapur, Golconda and other states. So whole social life of Deccan was destroyed by these wars between the Mughals and the Deccani sultans.
I see.
So it also affected the Sufis. They also left the major towns and left for Aurangabad and some other towns or to Maharashtra under the Marathas. So Aurangzeb's aggression proved very harmful for the continuation of Sufi movement in Deccan.
I see. So dear friends, we are going to take a short break now and we will be back after a few moments.
You are listening to Sufi Nama on Radio Manu 90.0 FM. ये है रेडियो मानू, एक कम्युनिटी रेडियो स्टेशन.
So join the wave, come along for the ride. Radio Manu 90.0 FM, we're by your side. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
Your voice, your guide.
Let's listen to History's Mysteries.
दोस्तों, हिस्ट्रीज मिस्ट्रीज में खैर मकदम है. मैं हूं आरजे उबैद और आज हम बात करेंगे सफरेज मूवमेंट के बारे में. दोस्तों, आज हम आपको एक ऐसी तहरीक के बारे में बताने जा रहे हैं जिसने दुनिया के निस्फ आबादी यानी ख्वातीन की ज़िंदगी बदल कर रख दी. ये है सफरेज मूवमेंट यानी वोट का हक हासिल करने की जद्दोजहद. 19वीं सदी से पहले ज़्यादातर दुनिया में सिर्फ मर्दों को ही वोट देने और सियासत में हिस्सा लेने का हक हासिल था. ख्वातीन को न सिर्फ वोट देने से महरूम रखा जाता था बल्कि उन्हें समाजी और सियासी फैसलों में भी नज़रअंदाज किया जाता था. इस नाइंसाफ़ी के खिलाफ ख्वातीन ने आवाज़ बुलंद की. 19वीं सदी के आखिर और 20वीं सदी के आगाज़ में यूरोप और अमेरिका में ख्वातीन ने बड़ी तहरीकें चलाई. वो जलसे करती, जुलूस निकालती और हुकूमत से मुतालबा करती कि उन्हें भी वोट का बराबर हक दिया जाए. इन ख्वातीन को सफ्रेजेट्स कहा जाता था. अगर हम सबसे मशहूर तहरीकों के बारे में बात करें तो बरतानिया में एमिलीन पैंकहर्स्ट और उनके साथी ख्वातीन ने सख्त जद्दोजहद की. अमेरिका में सूजन बी एंथनी और दीगर रहनुमाओं ने ख्वातीन के हक़ राय दही के लिए भरपूर तहरीक चलाई. दोस्तों, शुरू में इन ख्वातीन को बहुत मुखालफत का सामना करना पड़ा. उन्हें जेलों में डाला गया, उन पर तशद्दुद हुआ, मगर वो पीछे नहीं हटी. आखिरकार उनकी मेहनत रंग लाई और 1920 में अमेरिका में ख्वातीन को वोट देने का हक मिला. बरतानिया में भी आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख्वातीन को वोट का हक मिल गया. बाद में ये हक पूरी दुनिया में ख्वातीन को दिया जाने लगा. आज दुनिया के तकरीबन हर मुल्क में मर्दों के साथ साथ औरतों को भी वोट देने का मसावी हक हासिल है. दोस्तों, आप सुने थे हिस्ट्रीज मिस्ट्रीज. आज उबैद के साथ आपसे फिर मुलाकात होगी. तब तक के सुनते रेडियो 90.0 FM. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
आप सुन रहे थे हिस्ट्रीज मिस्ट्रीज. सेल्स, मार्केटिंग और ब्रांड प्रमोशंस के लिए हमसे राब्ता करें radiomanu@manu.edu.in पर.
So join the wave, come along for the ride. Radio Manu 90.0 FM, we're by your side. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
Your voice, your guide.
You are listening to Sufi Nama on Radio Manu 90.0 FM.
Welcome back. We are in conversation with Professor Azizuddin Hussain on Sufism in Deccan. Before Aurangzeb came, can we see, for example, waqfnames written for the Sufis? How did the Sultan support the Sufis, let's say, in a financial way? Or how did the Khanaqahs live? From what did they get there? I mean, you need some money to survive.
Yes, of course. Without that, you can't run a Khanqah.
No.
So as far as the Khanqah of Sayyid Muhammad Hussaini Banda Nawaz Yusuf, so they have given agricultural land.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that from the revenue, and it was tax-free. And I think 200 bighas like that they have granted because it was one of the most popular Khanqah of Deccan.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the small Khanqahs are concerned, so they were giving cash grants because they were not in a position to collect the revenue and having so much employment in their Khanqah. So they were supporting them with cash. So both with the land grants, Madad grant, and as well as the cash grants. So they were giving a lot of, because indirectly they were also serving the purpose of the government.
Yeah.
For example, today, university is there. So university is working and the whole structure of the university is there. So basically, the vice chancellor and other functionaries of the university working on behalf of the government.
Yes.
For the imparting of education.
Yes.
Because Prime Minister can't run the university, so a structure is created.
Yes,
Universities will be there. They will teach the students of that region. Same way, Sufis also worked.
Yeah.
So these sultans thought that we can't do teaching. We can't arrange teachers, open schools, open madrasas. Let us finance ulama and the mashayikh. They will teach the students. They will organize all those things in their region.
Yeah. So now you are insisting on the point of education.
Yes.
And of course, the Khanaqah is important. Can you say something about the relation between the Khanaqah and the madrasa? Were Sufi sheikhs at the same time teaching in madrasas, or were teachers from the madrasa Sufis at the same time, or how was the relationship?
There were two types of madrasas.
Yeah.
One run by the ulama under the patronage of the sultan, and the other category of the madrasa run by the Sufis in their own khanqahs.
Okay.
And the syllabi of the madrasas, both the madrasas were different.
Okay.
Because they were having emphasis on the Sufi literature.
Yeah.
For example, Futuhat Makkiyah, Awariful Ma'arif, and Kashful Mahjub were essential part of the teaching at the Sufi madrasas. Other subjects were also, and also the tib, medicine, was also a part of the teaching, both under the ulama as well as the mashayikh. So these two parallel madrasas were going on, but they were not having separate madrasas.
Yeah.
They were having in their own khanqah, they were teaching, and students were coming regularly, and there was no question of any examination.
Yeah.
For example, a student lived in khanqah and attended the lectures of the sheikh. So they used to give a certificate that Professor Orthman attended our Khanqah Madrasa for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
No percentage, no division, nothing else. You go to the market and establish your scholarship.
I have one follow-up question. What about the languages used in the madrasas? Because we were talking about language issues.
Yes.
So the first language we would think about is Arabic, which you need, of course, for religious studies.
Yes.
Then you have Persian, but you also Dakhni.
Yes.
Can you say something about the relation between these three languages in the two different madrasa systems?
Yes. As far as the ulama are concerned, ulama, they restricted to Arabic.
Yeah.
No Persian even.
Yeah.
But as far as the Sufi madrasa is concerned, Arabic, Persian, and the local language. If they were working in Punjab, so they will also teach Punjabi.
Yeah.
If they are working in Bengal, they will teach Bengali also. If they are in Deccan, they will teach Deccani. But as far as the Quran is concerned, Tafsir of Quran is concerned, Fiqh is concerned, so they will teach in Arabic.
Yeah.
But as far as a Persian is concerned, Masnavi of Maulana Rum and the Diwan of Hafiz Shirazi, Diwan of Sheikh Sadi, they were teaching in Persian. So a lot of work was done by these Persian poets for the Sufism.
What about the students attending the classes? You were already mentioning women, but I'm also interested in the question, were all the people going there Muslims, or did also non-Muslims go to this kind of education system in the Deccan?
Though we don't have any data
Yeah.
in the Malfulat or in their Tazkirat, but their madrasas were open,
Yeah.
Sufi madrasas,
Yeah.
open to all. So there was a possibility that some non-Muslims might be coming because the works done during the 17th and 18th century or 19th century by some Hindus, it reflects
Yes.
that they have taken education from these madrasas. They were writing on Karbala, they were writing on Wahdatul Wujud, they were writing on some other aspects of life and culture. So indirectly we can presume
Yeah.
that they must be attending these classes, because for the Sufi madrasas there was no question of any discrimination between a Muslim and a Hindu or a Christian. Anybody can come, can sit and attend the madrasa.
I mean, we learn, or sometimes we find in the research literature that Sufism was a kind of, let's say, meeting point between Muslims and Hindus, and that aspects of Hindu culture were integrated into the cultural, let's say, life of Sufis.
Yes.
To what extent do we find traces of that for the Deccan Sufis?
I think as far as harmony is concerned, same thing we find in the north and the Deccan. And they were living together and talking together. For example, while I was discussing Masnavi of Maulana Rum with Professor Sayyid Anwar Hasan Sahab, so I told him while I was working in Vrindavan, monuments, so I found around 50 books
Yeah.
dealing with the Masnavi of Maulana Rum.
Yeah.
And the custodians of those books were Hindus.
Okay. Where was that? Sorry?
Vrindavan near Masra
I
in
see.
UP,
Okay.
near
Yeah.
Agra, where we are having Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
So they are having around 50 books dealing with the Masnavi of Maulana Rum, and the custodians were Hindus. So this was the contribution of the Sufis.
What about the most important tariqas in the Deccan? So we learn a lot about the Chishtis, which are especially influential, let's say, in the Mughal Empire. But what about here in the Deccan? Are they as much influential, or are there other tariqas which are more influential than them?
In Deccan, I think two silsilas were having upper hand, Chishti and Junaidi. Rest of the silsilas were there, but they were not having so much influence on the sultans or on the people, because they were very near to the people. And they have no question of any discrimination between one and the other.
So maybe you can tell us also a little bit about your next projects. I mean, you just edited one book, but I'm pretty sure this is not the end of your studies. So what are your next plans?
Two books have come,
Yes.
Sufis of Punjab and Sufis of Deccan. Now I'm preparing the second volume of Sufis of Deccan.
Okay.
It is, I have given to the typist. He's typing because I can't type myself.
Yeah.
So that is why I couldn't send you the message. I can only talk, but I can't type. So that now on 9th I am leaving for Delhi to just see that book, which is one of my typists is getting typed. I'll make corrections. So that second book will also be ready for publication, because there we get lot of Sufis who work for the promotion of learning and communal harmony.
I see. So dear friends, we are going to take a short break now and we will be back after a few moments.
आप सुन रहे हैं सूफी नामा रेडियो मानू 90.0 FM पर। Radio Manu, a community radio station.
So join the wave, come along for the ride. Radio Manu 90.0 FM, we're by your side. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
Your voice, your guide.
ये है रेडियो मानू 90.0 FM. आइए अब सुनते हैं द माइंडफुल मिनट.
Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. This profound thought comes to us from Napoleon Hill.
इंसान तदबीर करता है, कामयाबी खुदा के हाथ है. चीनी अदब.
वेद व्यास ने कहा है, वैर के कारण उत्पन्न होने वाली आग एक पक्ष को सुहा किए बिना कभी शांत नहीं होती.
This is Radio Manu 90.0 FM. You were listening to the Mindful Minute. For sales, marketing and brand promotions, write to us on Radio Manu at manu.edu.in.
So join the wave, come along for the ride. Radio Manu 90.0 FM, we're by your side. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
Your voice, your guide.
आप सुन रहे हैं सूफी नामा रेडियो मानू 90.0 FM पर.
Welcome back. We are in conversation with Professor Azizuddin Hussain on Sufism in Deccan. So, is there any Khanaqah building? So, we are talking now about education, we are talking about silsilas. But what about the architecture and about the monuments which they have left? So to what extent do we still find, let's say, old Khanaqah buildings, and to what extent is this kind of Sufism still a living tradition in the Deccan? So this is a two-part question,
yes,
sorry.
Yes. As far as the Khanqahs are concerned, so these Sufis were not spending money on the building of the Khanqah.
Yeah.
Because they thought that this is a public money.
Yeah.
So let us only build a room or a hall so that we can work there, but not so strong like the buildings built by the Bashas, kings, sultans, and the Umrah. They are building very strong. So I think we don't have any living Khanqah now. Only these, their dargahs are there, which after their death, built by the kings and the rulers or the nobles in their memory. So we don't have any living Khanqah nowadays because they were not building a very pakka structure for teaching students.
I see. And there are also no splendid tombs
They were
left.
so simple that there was one Sufi in the Deccan. So there was one stone slab on which students were putting off their shoes.
Yeah.
And they were entering in his room for teaching. So before his death, he willed that when he will be buried, so his grave should be covered with that stone on which his students were putting his shoes.
I see.
So this was the simplicity that, and they were having such a regard for the students that he willed that don't leave it here. Cover my grave with this stone.
I see. So it's a very
So
modest.
nothing is left. So nothing is
I see.
Yes.
So, no, not nothing is left. The texts are left.
Text,
so
yes.
we find the memory in the
Yes, yes,
text, which
yes,
we
yes.
should study
Yes,
and
yes.
keep the memory on
Yes,
these.
yes.
If you would be asked to summarize a little bit the importance of Sufism in Deccan, how would you summarize it for our audience?
Basically, their main contribution was the concept of Ishq. Ishq with God and Ishq with people, creation of God. So, if you care God in the same way, you care His creature also. So that there should not be any enmity between one and the two. And as far as the religion is concerned, it is your optional thing. It is your personal thing, which has nothing to do with me. So this message was given by both Sufis of North and Sufis of Deccan to the people. And I think that is an important aspect of the Indian society and culture even today.
And if I would ask you to translate it to our audience, how would you translate this central term?
As Jami has said,
Yeah.
Bande ishudi tark nasab kun jami ke dari ra falan ibn falan cheeze nis. So they were basically talking about the ish. Forget about your genealogy or nothing. You are basically the creature of God and nothing.
So thank you very
Thank you very
much,
much.
Professor Azizuddin Hussain.
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you,
you
Professor
have given
Osman.
so much interesting information, and I'm very glad that I had this opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, and we will be back for another session on Sufism in Deccan. Stay tuned.
You were listening to Sufi Nama on Radio Manu 90.0 FM. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.
आप सुन रहे हैं रेडियो मानो 90.0 FM. चलो बात करके देखते हैं.